Voila, we're on. Good morning,
Yes.
Laerke.
Good morning, Angie.
I'm so excited to speak to you. We've been working together for almost a year and a half, and I still feel like there's just this like whole stories of you that I don't know yet, and I'm so excited to dig in a little. Um, I like to start by like acknowledging where we are. So I'm here in Brittany, in Finisterre, and where are you?
I am in Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands in my house.
And you're getting ready to rent out the house and move around for a few months, right?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to leave for basically 5 months in a few weeks. It's a bit overwhelming, especially imagining going to so many different places. But I know as soon as I'm on the road, I love it. It's just more the transition always makes me a bit stressed out. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
it's so amazing here. Why would I ever want to leave? And as soon as I leave, I'm like, I love traveling.
That's it, right? I like that we can be like part homebody and part nomad though. And like, look how cute your house is. You've got plants and the sun's coming in. How far away are you from the beach?
10 minutes driving.
Okay.
I'm in a small village called Laerke that is in, it kind of became the surf village, even though it's not up by the coastline, but it's situated a little bit in the middle. So you have 10-minute access to the north coast, to the east coast. It's kind of like in the middle where you can go anywhere and find a wave fast.
Amazing. And how long have you been living there? Because you're obviously not originally from the Canaries, and we'll get into your backstory, but how long have you been living there now?
It's been 8 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of like time flies very fast on this island.
Wow. And how did, like, what took you there in the first place?
It was kind of random in a way, but at the same time, maybe not so random. But then I'm already going to go into a backstory. But
Just go, we'll flow.
I was born in this community in Denmark where we lived multiple families and a lot of people together. And one of the families had a girl called Jo. She was kind of like my big sister. She's 10 years older than me. And so many things that I ended up doing in my life had to do with her, even though we only lived together for 4 years. And then after that, we've just kept contact. And she lives here. She's been living here for 30 years almost. And
Wow.
and I just wanted to visit her, but just like a short visit. And then everything kind of changed around once I came here and started surfing and realized that I didn't really need much more than just time and sunsets and yeah.
So you grew up in Denmark on a commune?
Yes.
Wow, that's fascinating. Which part of Denmark?
I lived outside the Aarhus, which is like the second biggest city, close to the coastline. And the first community I lived in was it was an old water mill. I don't know what it's called in English actually. Like this big wooden mill next to a creek. Yeah. Very like romantic old house that my parents found together with some friends, and then they turned it into a community.
Oh, wow. So your parents started the community?
Together with a lot of friends. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's so fascinating.
My dad has, I can go into so many details.
Oh, please do. Don't hold back.
Because my dad has this funny story of like this was in the 80s, and they just wanted to find something cheap close to this big city. So he just went biking around trying to find old houses. And then he really had to pee. So he saw this nice creek, and he was like, I'm going to pee in this creek. And as he was peeing, the guy approached him, and he was like super scared that he did something wrong. And then the guy was mistaking him for the realtor agent, the real estate agent. So he was like, thank you for coming so fast. And my dad just kind of went along with it. And then once he realized that the guy was trying to sell this old house, he was like, maybe I could buy it and we don't need the agent. And that's how he bought this.
Oh my God, just for having a pee in the creek. So your dad must have been like, I've met him briefly for 5 minutes during one of our producer calls, and he was already telling a bit of, hinting that he has some stories up his sleeve from sailing. So at this time, was this before you were born when the whole they found the first place?
Yeah, I wasn't born yet. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it was in 81 or 82.
Okay, so
I
you're
was born in
almost
85.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you have siblings or at all?
I have 2 sisters. So after
Older or
living in
younger?
this younger. So after living in this community for 4 years, they had renovated the house so much that it actually got too expensive in taxes because the property value was rising a lot because the house got so nice. So they wanted to find something cheaper, and they found another old house, and we moved in there just with one other family. So it was my family and another family in one big house, and that's where I lived my whole life.
Okay,
that.
and so is that a similar, like there's quite a bit of property and then like it expanded out from that, or?
It was just one house that was all together, and then a big property around it. And then we kind of built our way. So we ended up having 2 different apartments in the house. We started out having just one shared kitchen. I think it was probably a very hectic time for my parents because everyone had small babies. Everyone was doing like building the house, and eventually we ended up having 2 different apartments and like a shared space in the middle, and everything outside was shared, and we just kind of went in and out of.
I'm super intrigued by this, like, because I went through several years where I was raising the boys as a single mom, and I don't want to romanticize the idea, as I'm sure that like there were challenges with that, but my dream was to have, like some kind of community arrangement where I could have help in raising my kids and, be a part of raising other people's kids. And so it's really interesting that that is actually what your childhood was like. Like, how many kids were running around?
We were 6 in total, and we're still like each other's best friends. Like, I consider the 3 other kids from the other family like my siblings, because I could just, if I called them my friends, it would just sound too empty because they're just so much more.
You're way closer than that.
Yeah. And I think for my oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think for my mom as well, it was a big help because my dad, he worked for most of my life as a captain. So he was always away for 1 month and home for 1 month. And my mom was a nurse, so she had many night shifts. And that was really helpful having the other families. So if we were asleep, there was already some grown-ups that could like check on us in case. And
okay, so so your dad's a captain of like big ships? What kind of boats?
Yeah, like big tankers sailing with vegetable oils, mostly around Europe and the North Sea.
And this is where sailing comes into your life then?
Before he started working with the big boats, he had already sailed like his whole life with his brothers. He grew up next to the coast or just in front of the beach, and always sailed, even built like a catamaran when he was or had a catamaran with his friend, like a small kind of like Hobie catamaran, and was really into sailing. And him and his brothers, they bought an old fishing boat, and then they turned it into a sailing boat, like a 2-mast wooden sailing boat that was kind of our summer house that we spent all of our summers on.
And Keanu was like telling me that your dad, is this the wooden boat that he built, or and then you were sailing around like as a baby on this boat?
Yeah, when I was 3 months old, actually, that's when they did because most of the time this boat has stayed in Denmark.
Okay.
But when I was 3 months old, they had sailed it down to the Mediterranean and down to the Canary Islands. And then my parents got on in Tenerife and sailed it up to Madeira and the Azores when I was 3 months.
Wow. You have no recollection of that, but there's like no doubt that this is putting like salt in your veins, literally.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I have some pictures of my mom. She said she had they had really, really heavy weather, actually, going up to the Azores. And I think it was horrible for her. She had like infections in her breasts and
Oh no,
just having this little baby.
Mastitis is like the worst thing, and to be on a boat in bad weather, oh, I can only imagine. So you grew up on this commune, like the second one, with this other family, and dad's away 1 month at a time, and your mum's doing night shift, and so like essentially the other family is chipping in to help. You're raising each other's kids, and all the kids are running around. Did you go to school?
Yes, I went to Waldorf school.
Okay.
That's one of the things that me and Kiana really bonded over when we met each other, because it's such a specific schooling that if you know, like if you meet somebody that has gone to the school, you just know you share all these kind of weird but also very cool things.
So tell me what it was like. I have a few friends who sent their children to Waldorf schools, or I don't know if they have them in Scandinavia, but in Australia we also have Steiner School. Tell me about what it was like going to Waldorf.
I mean, for me, I think it was definitely the perfect solution, because I've always been a little bit of like a dreamer. I think sometimes I'm like, where was I even mentally for this whole time? And very good at like creative, crafty stuff, maybe not so good at like some more academic stuff. And I think the Waldorf school kind of gives every child the time they need to learn. So I always felt like I was super good at everything. But I think if I had gone to like a normal school, I would probably have come out feeling differently, because other things are valued higher than maybe creative crafts. And then after Waldorf school, I supplied with some university. I went to university and I supplied with like extra things to get grades. And it was actually very easy, because at this moment, when I was like 18, I was mentally ready to study.
Yeah, right. So it was almost like this safe space to just explore being, right? Like just being this kid evolving through life, until the age of 18, but being able to express yourself kind of however you wanted, like obviously not rebelling and things like that, but if you were showing signs of excess creativity and wanting to express yourself that way, the school was therefore like, how were they picking that up and nurturing that?
I think when I studied, we had basically no books, so everything was written on a blackboard. Then we would write it in a little journal, and then we had to make our books. So we had to write everything with with a pen, with ink, and then we had to do the illustrations ourselves. And then you would hand in the book. There was like every month we had new subjects. In the morning we had different subjects, and then we had the regular subjects after the morning class. But then you would hand in the book, and then you would get comments from your teacher on what to do better and what you did good. So I always made really beautiful books, so that's why I felt like I was doing great.
And is this where like your artwork sort of began, and like did you have to really work at that, or did it just come completely naturally? Because maybe some people don't realize that you're the graphic designer and artist behind Women in the Wind. Like, of course, you each have your own artistic expressions. Alisa, obviously, phenomenal cinematographer and photographer, but all of the design is you. This is you, the t-shirts, the merch, that's your work.
Yes.
The flag.
The flag, true. I think for sure, having this background, it's very natural for me to work with visual storytelling and creating things with my hands. So I can't really say that it was like one day I decided this is something I want to learn. It's something that I've always been doing, and then slowly perfecting different skills in like visual storytelling, I think.
Right. So you start to apply to go to university, and are you going to study arts?
No, I actually went to university for Brazilian studies, because prior to going to university, I went to Brazil and I studied dance. So I did when I finished school, I went to dance school for 1 year to do ballet, modern dance, and like all the basics. And then I went to Brazil because Jo, the woman that actually made me live in Fuerteventura, she was coming home from Fuerteventura, and she told me, if you like dancing, you need to go to Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. And that's basically all she said. And then she just left. And I was like, Salvador, I don't know. And then it was this time when people started asking me, what are you going to do after school? And I don't know if it was just like lack of other answers. I was just like, I'm going to Brazil. I just kind of started creating this reality for myself, not really knowing anything about Brazil. And this was in 2005. So like at this moment, you went to like a travel agency to buy the ticket. And I
you
went
get
to
the
travel
brochure and like you're asking for a flight package.
and I didn't know anything. I remember going to the travel agency and I asked, can I go? I want to buy a ticket to Salvador, Brazil. And they were like, El Salvador? And I was like, I don't know if it's El Salvador. I don't think it's called El Salvador. And I almost got a ticket to El Salvador instead of Salvador da Bahia.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're like 18 years old at this point?
I was 19 when I left to Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you working before this? Did you have to pay for your own travel?
Yeah, I did the dancing school, and meanwhile I worked 2 different jobs in like a restaurant and a nightclub. I basically worked like 12-hour shifts, but I thought it was so exciting because I had never really, like, it was so nice to feel independent and make your own money. And yeah, I was just so excited to be out of school, to be honest.
Growing up in Denmark, is it a culture of like working a part-time job as a kid? Like in Australia, where a lot of us are working from, I think now the age is 15. I think I started at 14, and you just have these part-time jobs and then you go to uni and you're working. But in France, for example, my son Ryder, who's about to turn 16, he really wants to work this summer. And it's really challenging because of all the paperwork, and there's a lot of laws around children working, and it's basically like a no. We keep getting told no, he's not going to get hired anywhere, which is really frustrating for him because he wants to be independent and a little bit and have his own money. So what's it like growing up in Denmark?
In Denmark, it's pretty normal that you start working like a part-time job around 14, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like another category until you're 18. There's like another minimum salary and you don't pay the taxes like you do after 18.
Yeah.
So people do like where they go on the route with the newspaper, or there's all these like classical underage jobs that you do. I did the worst one, but I was also very excited, where you're in the supermarket behind this booth. In Denmark, we have a really nice deposit and return system for bottles. And it's like a machine, you put the bottle in, but actually behind the machine, there's probably like some teenager. And that was like my job. So you have to get all these bottles and put them in the boxes.
But that's interesting. Is this like your first taste of recycling and that kind of thing, or did you already have that education from Waldorf and growing up on the commune?
I think from my parents, yeah, this has always been like part of my life, this thing of recycling. My dad and the dad from the other family had a long time working with groundwater, so it was just imprinted in me, like batteries are bad for the groundwater, and all these different things.
Oh, that's super interesting because that becomes such an important part of your job and work now, but we'll get to that point. So are you living at the commune, the big community house still, when you're having these part-time jobs and going to the travel agent and getting ready to go to Brazil?
No, the first job when I was 16, yeah, I was still living at home. But as soon as I turned 18, I got a job in a restaurant and I moved into the restaurant, basically the storage unit of the restaurant. But again, when I think about all this, I'm like, wow, I just remember being so excited. And my room was like, you had to go through my room to go to where the freezer was.
Oh my God.
I was like, this is so cool. And every day the owner of the restaurant would walk through my room to get like frozen soups and stuff. But I was like,
what kind of restaurant was it? What kind of food?
It was an organic vegetarian restaurant. So it was also very cool. Like I got into cooking a lot, and I've been working a lot with like vegetarian and organic cooking since then.
Wow, which this comes up in the movie when you guys are preparing to go on the voyage, and I think in one of the shots, like it looks like you're making I don't know, you with cabbage and you're massaging the cabbage. And I always think of that shot and I'm just like, but that's like the last thing I would think of to make on a voyage like that. I was always really impressed with that. Like, wow.
It's because the cabbage was going bad, so we made sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut, that's what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to make sauerkraut at home, let alone on that voyage in particular. But okay, so you're 18.
A lot of massaging, definitely. Very dry, dry cabbage.
Maybe we need like a Women in the Wind recipe book.
Me and Ali say, I mean, we had so much time. We were doing this whole like energy balls. I feel like I did a whole photo series of her eating the energy balls, me cooking them. I had all these visions of people who are gonna love these recipes.
Yeah, I'm keen. I think we should do that. Yeah. Okay, now I'm really excited because you're going to Brazil, and a little birdie told me that you enroll in samba school, and we have this group chat with the Women in the Wind producers that, you know, we talk to each other a lot in for the last year and a half. And I think at one point you even shared a photo of you like really dressed up, maybe for Carnival, like in the past in Brazil.
So actually, when I went to Brazil, I actually went to study ballet and modern dance, and then I also did a lot of like Afro-Brazilian dances and capoeira and dance history. It was more like a classical dance education I did for 2 years in Brazil. Samba is like part of the culture, so of course you learn how to samba and you go out and you party, but the real like samba teaching I actually learned in Canada because I went to Canada.
That's right, Toronto.
Later on in my life, yeah. And that's where I reconnected with a friend that I had met in Brazil, and she has a samba company, and she kind of just, it was basically just one day where she needed a dancer next morning, and she's like, I'm gonna have to put you in the show. And she put me in this costume, and slowly I learned, and she taught me a lot.
So you're living in Brazil before this for like 2 years then, and essentially you're at school now, you're studying.
Yeah, for almost 3 years I lived in Brazil and studied dance. Again, I went there with the intention of just going there for 6 months.
Okay.
And then I found this dance school that had an audition you could apply. It was more like local people doing this school, but I found this audition. I remember submitting and calling my parents on the payphone. And I was so excited, and I feel like they were crying. I'm like, no. And I was just like, I'm going to stay for 2 years.
Could you speak Portuguese at this point, or you were just picking it up?
After 3 months, I felt like I was speaking Portuguese, but I definitely was not speaking Portuguese, but I feel like I felt I was. And then slowly it got better and better. And I think the culture makes such a big difference to how you learn languages, and Brazilians are just so open, and they like talking, and people even like hearing themselves talk so much that they want to have conversations with you, even though you're not answering, because they're just talking and you can just like nod. So I spent a lot of time just listening and slowly.
And were you like, English was your second language then?
Yeah.
At
this moment, I only spoke Danish and English.
Okay, because this is like something that's fascinating about you is you're extremely multilingual. Like you speak Danish, English, Portuguese, Spanish. Are there any more? I'm sure. No. I'm sure you will learn French like within a couple of weeks of being here too. I'm sure of it.
That'd be nice. What's the next on my list?
Okay, so what pushes you on from Brazil?
Basically, just after finishing school, it was starting to get difficult with the visa, and then I tried having a job, and also I didn't have the permit to really work, so then that got complicated, and I was working in a restaurant because that's what I knew from home, and then I also realized it's very different. Like every time I came to apply for a job, people were like, why do you want to come from Europe and work in a restaurant? Because it's just such a low-paid work in Brazil. But yeah, I thought it was a very interesting experience for me to I worked for like a couple of months and as a waitress there, and it was really nice to see that whole side of of Brazil as well. And then I just decided I wanted to go home to study, and that's when I went to university at
Okay,
home.
okay, okay,
And yeah, and then
okay.
I went to study Brazilian studies because I
Right,
wanted to
okay,
go back to Brazil, but with a higher education and be able to like have a proper job and make
okay.
better money.
So you're really in love with Brazil now. So it's like go back, study Brazilian studies, get that academic qualification, and then go
Yeah.
back to Brazil. And is that what happened?
No.
And are you
Um,
sailing at all during this time? Like the the
no.
the aqua life, does that just kind of I have this like, in my life as well, that around the university kind of years, like because I surfed from a young age, like that kind of just goes on hold and you're working and you're partying and you're studying. So is that kind of what happened with you too?
I think sailing for me was always something we did with my family. And
Right.
to be honest, I was never one that showed too much interest in like learning stuff. I liked to be on the boat and like do all the things, but my younger sister was more into like sailing. She even did like the whole captain education and was like more interested in learning the craft of sailing. I was just like along for the rides kind of thing. And it was like a natural part of my upbringing. So when I
Right.
lived in Aarhus and I went to university, Aarhus is by the coast, and our at this time wooden boat, Olga, she was in the harbor, so I could 10 minutes I could bike down to where the boat was docked, and we had a dinghy. So often when the weather was good, I would bike down and like take the dinghy and just like go for a row in the bay. So it was still kind of part of my life, like the contact with the ocean, but not necessarily sailing.
Yeah, not like the degree now.
No.
Okay, so what you're studying, and then are you doing more art now, or does this come in a bit later?
So I was studying the Brazilian studies for maybe I only did 1 year of the bachelor or two. I can't remember. But in this whole time, I wasn't really into it because it was weird having been submerged so much into
Mm,
Brazilian studies and then go back to Denmark and sit and talk about how it
yeah.
is in Brazil. I just didn't really like that. I just liked to be part of it and be experiencing it. And this whole academic way of doing things also, I wasn't into it because especially in Waldorf school, you learn so much that you have to come up with your own answers, and there isn't this like right answer. And it was very hard for me to get into this academic way of this person said this and this person said that, and that's why I say this, but it's not really my opinion. And I don't know.
Right.
It didn't really feel like my thing, and I started to think that I wanted to go a more creative route. So I applied to go to the design school. And after some time of applying, I got into the Royal Academy of Arts and Design and
Oh,
Architecture.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's very hard process to get in. I think 1,000 people apply and 100 get in. And because I didn't have the proper university or the high school degree, I had to do all these extra things. But it was really cool. And then I did the bachelor in visual communication there in Copenhagen.
Okay, amazing. And to get in, did you have to present art as well? Like, did
Yeah,
you
you
have
have
to?
to you get a theme, and then you have to create. You have like a month of creating something, basically just based off a theme. So I think the theme when I applied was night. That's all you get
Okay.
basically, and then you have to show the whole thought process and come up with something that has to do with it. And if you want to study furniture design, you have to kind of take it into that direction. If you want to study visual communication and graphic design, the end result has to kind of be something in that
What
degree.
did you come up with?
I think for the night, I applied twice. So for the night one, I did a children's book of a child who was afraid of shadows, and then in the end, he kind of he saw that behind the shadows there were just these little creatures. It had like a deeper meaning, but I can't remember it. But it was like a pop-up children's book.
Oh, wow. And this is super interesting because you were saying at Waldorf School how your books were really good and you were super proud of them and you got great reviews from your teachers.
Yeah.
So you can see how that weaves in. I actually also find it brutal that, you got to spend like a month of your time unpaid to create this submission that so many people are not going to get accepted, like that's hard.
It is hard. A lot of people spend years trying to get in, and most people do like a supplementary school for 6 months to prepare just for this thing to get in. Yeah.
Once you're in, is it brutal?
I unfortunately caught some years that was like a transition from it being more of a craft school to getting more into academia. So we had a lot of lectures just to kind of for them to fit into the system of an academic education. So in the 3 years that I went there, my craft should have been like a graphic design, but also like the programs like Photoshop, InDesign. And in 3 years, I had 1 week of Photoshop and InDesign. So I didn't, but then along with that, I had a lot of really cool projects of, again, you just get like a brief and then you just have a month to create something. And it's giving a lot of space for you to like think completely out of the box and get really cool ideas. I wasn't so prepared for the real world, but I definitely learned like really creative thinking, which was cool. Yeah.
And then, I mean, the real world, surely you grow into that from your travels, because is there a period of traveling around after this?
That's when I went to Canada, because I went to do an internship at a design school in Toronto. And I don't know, sometimes I do things, they're just meant to be like this little thing I do, and then they end up turning my whole life around. So also with Canada, I just wanted to go for 3 months, I think. And in the end, I stayed for 6 months, and then I kept going back a few times and stayed there, for quite a while, and just working as a samba dancer.
This pattern of kind of like being very fluid and like living your life in a way that's almost like not attached to anything and being open to opportunities. And because you always to me, this might be just like a wrong judgment, but I always feel like in all our work together over a year and a half, you're a little quiet. But you're also like, I think most people don't realize that you have enormous confidence at the same time, or just like a lot of belief in yourself, that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go here for 6 months, and then that turns into 2 years, because this is like a big part of how Women in the Wind kind of started, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think for sure I have this confidence. I don't know where it comes from, but I do these things where I almost feel like I'm jumping off a cliff, and I have zero idea where I'm going to land and what I'm going to do. But I just like jump off a cliff and then hope that things are just like kind of going to figure themselves out. And I don't really feel scared in that moment of not having the plan.
That was going to be my question. Like, are you having anxiety when you make these decisions, or are you on the plane going somewhere and then going like, shit, what am I doing? Or are you just like, yay, this is going to be so fun?
I think I don't have an anxiety. I think I have I'm a super dreamer. So I'm always imagining all these future scenarios, and they excite me a lot, even if they are not going to happen. I don't know, I don't want things to be in a certain way. I don't have these expectations to my life, and I don't really think too far ahead. I think I'm very much in the moment. So I don't even know how to relate to how it is to think that way. Like, this is just who I am.
And I like there's a part in the movie where you're talking about how, when you've got you're fixed on an idea of what you want to do, and then you'll just tell everyone like, yeah, I'm going to go across the Atlantic, and like, you don't know when, you don't know how, but like, that's what you're going to do. There's a lot of people who have a dream and they get very fixed on it and attached to it, and then it's like, don't tell anyone, because if it doesn't happen, then I'm a failure. I'm like you, like, it doesn't matter whether it happens or not, although if I really want it, I'm going to do everything to make it happen. But I feel like I have to tell people, because then I also like hold some accountability on myself to kind of make it happen. Is that how it is for you, or are you just so excited you want to talk about it?
I think it depends on the plan. Like, small things I tend to hold for myself, also because I don't want to be pinned up on something. And And I have so many million ideas, and sometimes I talk a lot about all these things I want to do with my life, and then I remember friends being like, but what about this thing? I'm like, yeah, it's just a dream. People take it more serious than me. So I think I learned to, I only share the things that I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And the Atlantic crossing was I think it also came a little bit, it's something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to sail longer because we were always sailing in Denmark, and it was cool enough, but you're out at the ocean, you can always see land. And I just dreamt of like these tropical adventures and really being out at sea since I was like a child. But then
because you have these stories too, right? Like from your dad, but also books.
Yeah, a lot of books, and especially this one book where we have this family in Denmark that's very famous for sailing and through different generations. And one of the kids had this kids book where she tells it from her perspective of sailing around in the Caribbean. And I think somebody read this to me when I was 7 or 8. And I think ever since that book, I just started dreaming about wanting to go on this kind of adventure.
That's amazing. So what takes you to like away from Europe again now, or Canada, and then you end up I mean, when does surfing come into your life? Is this a little bit later, or because you meet Kiana in Azores?
No, I met her here in the Canaries.
Canaries.
I feel like when I'm telling my story, I'm like, wow, it's so all over the place. But I was going to Canada a lot, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna go live in Canada and work with advertisement. That was like my plan, because after graphic design, I kind of liked this thing of advertisement, just this like very creative way of thinking. And there was this agency in Toronto that I liked a lot. So that was my plan, and I applied to get a work visa for Canada. I got the visa, and then I had to move out of Copenhagen, and that's when I decided, okay, why not just go by Fuerteventura to visit Joe? I always wanted to do this, and now I have no attachment to Copenhagen, no job, so I'm just going to go 1 month to Fuerteventura, and then I go to Canada. And
is that what happened?
Then I went here for 1 month, and I did go to Canada, but I decided I wanted to go back to Fuerteventura.
You couldn't stop thinking about the Canaries. And what was it? What was the pull?
I mean, there was a guy.
I love it.
But I wouldn't say that he was a major pull, because I got offered a job at the yoga retreat that Joe worked in. So it was kind of the job offer, this guy, and just like a curiosity towards this place, even though it's a very specific island. Like there's no vegetation, it's just rocks. When you fly in over this place for the first time, you're like, wow, this looks like Mars or like some planet, how you would imagine it looks like. But I just had this curiosity to come back, and as soon as I came back, I just never really thought too much about going back to Canada, because that was such a different life, this city life, and I really started enjoying just the simplicity of life here. And I got really into surfing, and just this thing of going to the ocean every day and doing something for fun. Like we don't do that as grown-ups. I'm not doing it to make money. I'm not doing it to impress anyone. I'm just only doing it for fun.
That's something that came up in my chat with Kiana. Like, as you know, I study academically creative practice research, and I'm exploring this idea of regenerative creative practice and regeneration as just like, and creativity as something that's inherently human. Not a discipline, the arts, but just being human. And so I was asking Kiana about sailing as a creative practice, and as a surfer myself, I've been thinking a lot lately about surfing as just pure creativity. Like, what do you have to say about that? Would you agree?
I think for sure there is something, yeah, that sometimes I don't even know what category to put it in, but there is something about you're creating something in the moment. Like the wave comes and then you do something with that wave, and that moment was just that moment, and it never comes back. And I don't know if that's creativity or what it is, but it's something magical that you're like using the force of nature to move. And I think it's also very playful in a way. You're like playing with nature, and sometimes I forget because when you're in the lineup and you're in the surf, it's like aggressive and it's not all that. But then I have to like zoom out and think, wow, we're all here, grown-ups, just for fun, like as if we're at a playground. And
Yeah,
I think it's very cool.
it's quite remarkable, isn't it? Surfing. I mean, not the professional sport of surfing, which
No.
unfortunately in the lineup, a lot of dudes and some chicks as well come out with that, you know, it's a little bit more than play for them. It's like, I gotta get all the waves and whatever. For whatever reason, they're in that aggressive mood. Like, I grew up in South Australia surfing as one, like a small group of females. So surfed a lot with old men, and it's also very remote. So I'm used to, like, I guess, not really having a lot of aggression. It was a very welcoming community. And then, I moved to the East Coast. I lived in Japan for a long time, and France has been the worst experience for me. Like 5 years around Hossegor and Biarritz, it's like Southwest France. It's so aggressive. It's way different here in Brittany, but surfing for me is that pure aesthetic play. And I just love that every single wave is going to produce something different, and then you've got to make these decisions, like first of all to go or not go, and then once you're on the wave, like what do you get, but you're not really thinking about it at the same time. And like you said, you're not doing this for money, you're not doing this for work, like you're doing it purely for play and enjoyment. But that sometimes it's also not fun, when the conditions are really testing and annoying and maybe even like a bit dangerous. I don't know, I don't surf big waves, I like fun stuff.
I like some adrenaline though. Like,
Yeah,
not that I surf big waves, but I do definitely like this like sensation of a little bit of a bigger wave, and sometimes even the wipeout, even though it sounds insane, but this like second where you fall and you have no idea what's going to happen, you're like free flowing in the air and you're like, ooh, this is bad. There's some weird thing in my brain that maybe enjoys, because it's like you completely let go. Like you can do whatever to try to protect yourself, but it's also like a weird sensation of just completely letting go that I kind of like.
it's very humbling. What's the surf breaks like there? Are they beach breaks or are they more reef and rocky?
More reef and rocky, yeah, especially the places I go to. But we have a lot of variety of, there are a lot of different really nice waves here. But
Is
very
it
crowded
busy?
and
Yeah.
extremely crowded actually. I started surfing here in my 30s, so I don't really know how it is to surf in like a chill environment. Only I went to Cabo Verde a few times where I surfed, and they have like so many waves and not that many people surfing, so everyone is like excited that you paddle in and people sharing the waves. Like it's an amazing thing.
There are
And
a
it's
lot of
like
women
that.
surfing in the Canaries.
In the Canaries, yeah, there are quite some women, yeah.
Okay, that's great. So Kiana rolls in. Is this when she does her tandem crossing? So Ontong Java is there as well?
Yeah.
And
So
tell
this
that
time,
story.
I guess I've been living here for 4 years, and I had just gone to Canada again because I've been house sitting for a friend in Toronto a few times. She offered me again to house sit, so I went there to do that. It was like 2020, really 2 weeks, 1 week before total lockdown. Oh, now I'm getting lost in my own story. Actually, before going to Canada, I had gone to Cabo Verde for the first time to meet my sister, who had been working for Doctors Without Borders in Sudan. And she had her holiday and wanted to stay within Africa. And I realized Cabo Verde was super close to me. So we went there with no real plan and ended up in this really, really amazing surf town and met a lot of really cool local surfers. And then I came back to the Canaries and I went to go with all my trash to the point where you leave like big trash, Punto Limpio. And I saw these surfboards, and I had just been in a place where people had nothing. So I was like, wow, I want to bring these surfboards to Cabo Verde. And I was like, I need a boat. And that's how it all started for me.
Oh,
Because
wow. I
I
did not
had this,
know this part.
it's because there's so many versions of tell this story. And if I go into that story, it's like another story. But that's how it started for me, that I had seen these boards and I wanted to like create a project of bringing used surfboards to Cabo Verde. And then through some friends that knew Hans, they told me, Hans and Kiana is coming. You should meet them. Maybe Hans or Kiana can take the boards to Cabo Verde. And that's how we got in contact.
Right. So did you like meet in the anchorage, or because like what was the communications are super minimalist? I can't imagine like you're, calling Kiana at that time.
No, it's actually funny because Kiana was here on Maranoka, and also Otong Java, Hans's boat, was here. They were anchored in the Bay of Coralejo, and I think for quite some months. So I went for the first time, I just went with my friends that every time Hans is here, they go there, we do barbecues on the deck, and I went with them to meet everyone. So I met Hans, I met the crew, and I met Kiana. And then we went there a few times, and me and Kiana just chatted. But in this whole time Kiana was here, I never went on Maranoka.
Wow.
Sometimes I think, wow, it's so strange, because she wasn't really on Maranoka. It was just like this tiny little boat anchored far away.
But I mean,
from
Otong Java is like the mothership, right? So I mean, that's the I mean, when we went down to Portugal, Remy and us and the kids, to stay on Spirit of Gaia, Hannah Kaboon's 63-foot Polynesian double voyaging canoe, all of the anchorage, then there's not a lot of people, but everyone came to gather on Gaia. Like, so I feel like the bigger Polynesian boat, that's the gathering place.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, we just met there, Kiana and I, and started chatting, and we found all these similarities, that we went to the Waldorf school. And when I realized she was like, grew up in Brazil, I was super excited because I could speak Portuguese with her. And we just kind of, I don't know, chatted about different things. And I started putting this idea of the boards, going with the boards to Cabo Verde with her. And I don't think she was super into it, because she just didn't want to sail with anyone. But I was like trying to manipulate her and put this idea in her head. And then just one day before the lockdown, because then I went to Canada, came back. And at this moment, Hans was not here anymore. It was only Kiana. And because she wanted to go to Europe, I think was the plan.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what was coming, but we went for a walk around this volcano just next to my house, actually, where I live now. And she told me about her blog, and I was like, maybe I should help you write I guess I was just trying to like sell myself I just wanted to sail with her. So I was like, I could design your book. So you should write a book about yourself, so you could like live for the rest of your life just making money off that book and keep sailing. And I could do some photos, and I'll get us sponsored by Patagonia, and it's gonna be great. That was my pitch.
And she was just like, yeah, sure.
She's
not serious.
No, but then the pandemic happened. So then we just had a bunch of time to talk, and this thing of Cabo Verde was not going to happen because she wasn't going to go there, and nobody could go anywhere. So we actually really started planning this idea of me going with her on the boat and writing a book. And then slowly, with more and more time, it turned into be something bigger. So we got more people involved, and she didn't really want it to be about her and this book. So she wanted to make it about something bigger. And then this whole topic of plastic pollution as well came into the picture, because I've been working with Clean Ocean Project here in the Canaries. So that's kind of what I'm doing every day, has to do with plastic pollution. And I think we're just fascinated about the Atlantic Ocean and how it kind of connects all these different continents. So we were working with some friends of Kiana in Brazil, and Kiana at this moment was in the States, and I was in the Canaries. And I think this whole idea of these currents and winds that are like bringing all these debris and boats around, we wanted to create a project that kind of connected these two things.
This is a really interesting point, because people who don't know Kiana, hang on. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. People who don't know Kiana are like quick to presume that she's some influencer chick, and like I've defended her in some horrible Facebook comments, but it's fascinating because when you know her, it's like not that at all. And Women in the Wind, was like you said, it's really, you pitched this whole thing and it came from you, and then she kind of accidentally, and all of you accidentally, went viral. I mean, her her YouTube of her solo crossing, you know, is just so raw and honest and authentically her, and kind of like went viral in its own right. But then, you know, she just disappears from the digital space. So I really love like to hear your perspective of how Women in the Wind came about, because Kiana's always the first to say like it's because of Laerke that this happened, you know, like you're really the one who was like, yeah, like you pushed for this to happen, and it, you know, it's because of you. And now it's, you know, it's just gone into such a, not just the movie, but the next phase of it with the foundation and being able to give back to other women. So let's go back to this point now where, you know, you're in different places and you're starting to think about how to, you know, actually tell a story and make this into a documentary, because Kiana's like, yeah, no, I don't really want to write a book. And especially whilst doing the voyage, because she's got a captain and things like that, because you're about to give up like a sacrifice, like a massive chunk of your time and life. So how does it get to this point where you're like, okay, I'm coming to Florida, where Marinoka is on the hard, getting ready for this voyage, and you think you're going for like a few weeks? How do you get to this point where you're like selling your car? Tell me about what happened.
So, I mean, for me, in this whole time that me and Kiana were talking and this story was evolving, and these two other women got brought into the project, Beatriz and Mayara, two Brazilians. One is an artist based in Miami, and Mayara is a filmmaker, visual storyteller in Brazil. Both, Kiana met both of these women online. They had never met in real life. So it was the four of us that kind of built the whole Women in the Wind idea, and brainstormed on the name, like Mulheres do Vento. We had this Brazilian name, and we had this whole idea, but we were like in the middle of the pandemic and all in different countries, where suddenly there was a lockdown in Brazil, there was a lockdown in Spain. So everything kind of stayed on this like dream state. And I think because I have this tendency of just jumping off the cliff and like feeling like everything is going to figure itself out, I never really felt that it was a big risk or that it was something I couldn't do, because I wasn't thinking, okay, how am I going to pay my student loan, or how am I going to pay my rent? Or I just kind of felt like I'm just going to do this, and then I'll figure out all these little things as I go along.
These annoying little realistic things.
And don't yeah, of course, it's a privilege to be able to do that, but I'm not also not figuring out all this out because I have money. It's just also because maybe I'm also willing to give up things and go for new adventures. That's, I think, a really important part of who you are, because you do sacrifice. You didn't have to do that, but you do. And like, who calls who to say come to Florida or I'm coming? So we kept like trying to make these deadlines, because the idea was to cross the Atlantic in 2021. So we were already in the spring, and me and Kiana kept having these, like, we all had meetings, but the two other women, Beatriz was not able to travel because she was still in the process of getting a green card. And I don't even know if it's like a very difficult process in the States, even if you're working. And Mayara also was not able to just like let go of everything like that and the pandemic. So I think I was the only one. And I think Kiana was very ready to just be like, yeah, whatever. I'm just going to continue my life alone. But I just kept insisting. So eventually I was like, okay, we have to make this project not about the four of us, but just like the two of us, and like try to pitch it and get sponsors. And we made a really cool, I made like this cool project, and we made the website, but nobody really, it's not that anyone supported us. We just had this idea, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing it. And I bought the ticket. So I couldn't, at this moment, I didn't really have any money. I just bought a one-way ticket to the Dominican Republic because I had to quarantine there because of COVID. So I had to be 14 days out of Europe. And I sold my car and my surfboard. I made 450 euros, and the car 300 euros.
So you're not even at 1,000 euros.
No, I think
did that cover the ticket?
I think when I was in the Dominican Republic, I think I had like 300 euros on my account, to be honest. I had I had nothing because it had also been pandemic here. So it's not that I was really working a lot. But Kiana maybe also made me just believe like we're going to just figure it out. And once you get here, you can on the boat. So she was even telling me when I got to the Dominican Republic that maybe she was going to go pick me up there. And then
from on the boat. Yeah, that totally did not happen.
And then when I was in the Dominican Republic eating rice, I didn't understand that you could just buy cheap food on the street. So I was like, I'm going to really just stay at home and eat rice every day.
It was probably cheaper to eat out on the street.
Probably, yeah. But then I finally made it to the States, and she had already told me there might be some problems with the boat. And then when I got there, she still made it seem like we could still sail in 2 weeks. But at this moment, it was like Maranoka was completely stripped. There was like just bare wood that looked, to me, not so in such a good condition. The boat wasn't attached. It was just 2 canoes covered in tarps and like bunch of stuff everywhere. And Kiana was still like very confident that she's like, just 2 weeks. And then and I had no idea. I have a video actually I found the other day where I'm filming Maranoka from a distance. And Kiana is like, you can never show your parents this, because I think she knew that my dad probably would be like skeptical seeing the boat in this state. So I always showed them only a little bit, and we just stayed with this narrative of we're going to sail in 2 weeks for like a full year, because it was like a nice way to also not try to like think about the actual problem and the reality that for sure at some point many people would have thought it would be a bad idea to just burn it or give up. But because we only had this timeline of 2 weeks, we could kind of just keep going and take one day at a time.
Just keep extending it.
Yeah.
And at any point during this year, like pretty exhausting year, to be honest, of just rebuilding this boat, basically, that is in not the best condition with zero money, right? And mostly by yourself. Of course, you know, as with all boat refits, you're getting help from passers-by and family and stuff, but you're mostly on your own. Is there any point when doubt like finally starts to creep in, or you're just still positive, or is one of you up and the other down and you're bringing each other back up? Like you can't just stay emotionally high for a year doing that work.
No, I mean, there was always this dream, and I think both me and Kiana are like dreamers. So even if we're sitting under the 2 halls in the middle of all this like chaos, we were still talking about, imagine we're going to be like in the Caribbean, and like we were just imagining all these scenarios, maybe mostly me because Kiana had already sailed on the boat, but I was just dreaming so much. And the longer time we put into it, the less I felt like, I mean, because it wasn't so much fun. So I'm like, I can't just give up. And this was it. I spent like a year preparing this project, and then I spent so much time in this boatyard, and then I'm going to give up. So I just it wasn't really an option to give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if I wanted
totally
to,
get that. You were in too deep.
Yeah, we had to do it. And then of course also telling people that we were going to do it. Then that's when that started catching up, that it's not that we did it because we said to people we would, but also it kind of was maybe a fuel that, yeah, we're going to have to do it. Like, we're not going to give up.
At this point, does the Instagram and like Patreon stuff start to catch on? Like, is this when the public starts to, it's more after, right? Yeah. People don't know this. That's why like they don't believe that you guys really did this like with zero support.
I think before crossing the Atlantic, maybe, I don't remember actually, but I think before crossing, even when the boat was finished, maybe we have like 4,000 followers or something. It's not like people that followed us or friends or people that have met us. It wasn't like random people, because also it was always this boatyard and the stream, and I don't know, none of us were really also putting that much energy into this Instagram, because we just had this massive boat in front of us. And that was never our idea to like, let's make a movie about refitting the boat. We're like, let's just get this over with so we can do the thing that we wanted to do.
So this is incredible though, because like in a very short space of time then, on like if you macro out now and look at how long it's taken to get to this point, I mean, we're at like 250,000 people basically on social media, maybe more if you combine them all, and the attention from magazine articles and stuff right now. It's just like such a testament to both of your characters. Like that was never the drive, like never, you know.
No. Like even, I mean, crossing the Instagram was just something that we had there because of the trying to get sponsors, and also trying to like just like document a little bit what we were doing and kind of make it look professional, to have like a website and Instagram. But it was never the idea that all of this should exist on Instagram. It should be like something out of that platform. So also once we crossed the Atlantic, we were just doing like, we did 4 updates while crossing the Atlantic that I had sent to my friend, some pictures and like a short caption that she had to post with our coordinations, I think, because we didn't have really any way to communicate while crossing. And I remember at some point, because you were like, without internet, I was like, wow, imagine if we can have like 10,000 followers, because we actually did it. I don't know. It's not that I really aimed for this, but I think once we arrived, we still had like maybe 8,000 followers. And yeah, the Instagram was never a motivator, but then we had just done all this stuff and we had all these amazing pictures. And I was thinking, how can we share some of this in like a format that makes sense? So that's when I came up with this idea of sharing like our journal entries with some pictures. And that's when everything took off. So I think a lot of people thought we were sailing when we shared this, but we had already done the whole thing.
And so let's backtrack a little bit, because the other 2 girls that were, you know, we've established that the other 2 girls that were supposed to go with you, then they can't go with you. And so you're like, fuck it, we're going to do this ourselves. But you still want to maybe make a doco, or, you know, document it, you know, a little bit more professionally. And Kiana's like, I'm going to be, you know, busy with the boat. And Alisa pops up, you know, and like you guys is like, yeah, I can be wherever you need me to be in a few days, and literally also drops everything. Like, how's this magnetism of Marinoka bringing the dreamers ready to drop everything to come on board? Alisa rocks up, and you suddenly now have one of the most, like, I think personally, like, talented camera women who's not really made a documentary before. She's a photographer, and she has done some audiovisual stuff, but like, this is her first kind of doco. None of you guys know how to make a doco, which we've you know, you've learned so many things the hard way. But you have this very skeleton crew of sailors and creatives now together, very minimal equipment, like what, a crappy little drone, like 1 or 2 cameras, and that's it. Like, there's no massive documentary crew following you.
No.
What happens when Alisa comes on board?
I think, like, first of all, at this stage, when we're finally ready, it's already late in the season to cross.
Yeah.
And I think me and Kiana at this moment, to be honest, I think we're like a little bit done with each other, our dynamic. But at this like sister level, where it wasn't that we were like hated each other, but just we had just spent so much time together at our worst, where you're just like stressed out and yeah. So I think at this moment, both of us just wanted to get this Atlantic crossing over with. As for me, a way to get home. For Kiana, a way to like go to Europe so she could cross to Brazil, because she had this like deadline of getting to Brazil. Maybe that's not how Kiana remembers, but for me, that's how it was at this moment. We're just like, let's just get it over with. And then Alice came along because Kiana insisted, no, we have to document it. I think at this moment I was like, yeah, whatever. No one cares.
Just get it
I don't
over
care. Can we
with
just
now.
like sail and like be in peace out at sea?
Yeah.
I didn't really have this much of an urge to document it.
And also by like this point, you've tried so hard, like on your side, like you've packaged up everything in a website and you're trying to get sponsors and no one's interested. So like, okay, cool. Well, maybe this is just meant to be an experience for ourselves. And, you know, like maybe we can write about it later, but you're just tired now at this point.
That's what I was thinking also, because, we still had no money. So how are we going to like make a documentary and get equipment and all that stuff? But Alice came along. Probably Kiana also she has a convincing way of like selling dreams, I will say. Because she also has this thing of like, we're gonna figure it out. Like it's gonna. So for sure, she sold the idea to Alice, and I mean, for me, first I was a bit skeptical because now me and Kiana had this intimacy. So thinking about being out at sea with somebody that I knew that well made me comfortable, and then thinking, okay, we're gonna be with this person I don't know. But as soon as I met Alice, everything changed. And also for me, only the fact that she had said yes was like, okay, I don't know this woman, but if somebody says yes to this, they must be pretty cool.
Yeah, after so many no's, right? For getting support. There's this
but
funny,
also
like,
saying yes to crossing the Atlantic on this very old boat that she had seen when it was not even a boat. It was just, again, the two canoes with nothing on them. And for her to just say, yeah, I would like to cross the North Atlantic with you on this boat. I think for me, that was enough, knowing that, okay, she's going to be pretty cool.
That's funny. That's the naivety. Kiana was talking about that in our chat the other day. Like there's the same with us. Like, oh yeah, we're just going to build a brand new 41-foot Warram. No big deal. Like we've never built a boat before. We can barely sail. It's going to be no big deal. I think naivety is like such a friend though, and maybe even a privilege to have that naivety, because there's this great shot of it's very small, but you know, we've seen the movie so many times that I think now the shots stay in your head, and I really recommend that when it comes out people see it more than once, because there's so many things you pick up that you may not get in the first viewing. That's just my like subtle producer pitch to go to more than one screening.
I don't recommend watching it 100 times though, like we did.
No, don't watch it 1,000 times like us, because you're gonna end up not wanting to ever see it again. No, that's not true. But Alisa's like standing on the boat. Wait, it's on the water now. Like you've launched the boat on the water, and Elisa's standing there like just looking around, and it's just like the look on her face. I have to ask her what she was feeling in that moment, but the look that she gives is just like, we're gonna sail across the Atlantic in this, you know, like, and it's the boat is refit at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
it's hilarious.
She definitely brought this like new excitement towards the project that I think was like a fresh energy that me and Kiana needed. So we kind of regained all these dreams that we had prior to the boatyard experience, and it was really nice to have her come in with this fresh energy. And sometimes I guess I envied her complete naivety towards sailing, because I still, even though I didn't know how to sail, I came with this whole background of a family who has sailed, and like safety and stories about people falling overboard and all these things from my parents of like, you have to wear a life jacket, and like all these things that I knew that she didn't have all that in her head. And sometimes I was like, I wish I just could like experience this without all these fears and out all this
and especially because
stories.
like you've I mean, this is one thing that I feel like myself, I guess, being a surfer, I think, like, because I understand the dangers of the ocean, and we've also been doing some like professional sailing training, but the idea that like we're building this boat, and so then if anything happens, it's like on us. Like you and Kiana just rebuilt this boat together, and now you have a very naive and amazing girl come and join you, and then like there's got to be some level, I mean, for sure, maybe the more on Kiana's back as the captain, but I'm sure you must have felt some responsibility too. And like if anything happens, was it that little bit that I glassed, or you know?
I think, to be honest, the hulls, because I knew that Kiana had already crossed the Atlantic twice on the boat in the state that I saw it in when I arrived. So I'm like, wow, if she can do that by herself, like what the cards we have on our hands are way better. Not that I felt that I was going to contribute much to the sailing, but like already knowing that she had done this by herself was like enough for me, that I knew she was going to be able to. We were going to be able to do it, and any kind of problems that would arise, I mean, not a hurricane, but some problems she would be able to solve in the moment, because she had already solved so many problems on her sailing, which I think a lot of maybe very skilled sailors never get to experience, or not never, but she had definitely done a lot of things for the short time she had sailed that made me confident that she was going to be able to figure things out. And the
Yeah, that's a
hulls,
really good point.
I had a lot of confidence in. So I also was very grateful that I had seen the boat taken apart and I had understood the way it's structured and where are the points that are essential for stability and strength. And knowing that especially those points, maybe other points were not in the best shape, but the most important points were like at their best shape ever. So everything that I feared was everything that was all the rigging, because that basically that was just lying there next to the boat in the whole time we refitted the boat, and it just came on very late in the process and looked very questionable to me. some of the ropes.
That's really funny you bring that point up, because like even for us in the building process, like I would say like out of the 10 things I'm thinking about, like the last thing I'm thinking about is the rigging, because I mean it feels so far away from me, and maybe during the refit for you guys too, it's like, well, that's the last thing, and then it's kind of this rush and it's like late in the season, and then you realize you're going to be able to sail and make it still, but then the rigging's gonna go up. And I'm not sure if Kiana changed the rigging during that refit, because she had like 2 masts originally and now it's 1, or if she'd already changed that. But yeah, so you were just like sitting there for a year looking at what, like a tree trunk is laying there?
No, the tree, the tree, I mean, the mast was there, but the boom we got also very late in the process. We went to the land of Chris, our friend who had been helping us in the boatyard, and we just scouted for a boom. For a long time, I was like, every time I would drive around, I was looking for booms and like looking at the trees. When you say
looking for booms, you're like looking at trees going, that would this
looking
tree
at
make
trees,
a good boom?
Yeah, looking at trees that would have more or less the length that I imagined the boom had to be, and like the thickness, and just like be very straight. But yeah, so in the end, we went on this land and just went around in the forest and found one tree that we're like, this one looks good.
And you cut it down with
and
like
we cut
axes?
it down. I think, actually, I don't remember. I don't think it was a chainsaw. I think like just a handsaw, because it wasn't that thick. Maybe it was this thick. Yeah. And then Chris took it on to his truck and drove it, and it was extremely long. And yeah, we just had it there, and because it was so fresh, we got recommended not taking off the bark, so we left the bark on, so the wood would be able to cure, and we just kind of put it straight on to the boat and got a lot of
How
comments.
long is this, like the cutting the tree down to actually putting it on the boat and sailing? Like, are we talking like days, weeks, couple months?
Weeks. Yeah.
Wow, that is a fresh
probably
boom.
within a week.
Yeah. By this point, like, you're obviously communicating with your parents back home. Like, are you showing your dad progress of the boat, or are you like making sure you don't show him what the boat is looking like?
No, I'm showing it because I'm also feeling confident. Maybe not. I mean, I also still don't understand so much about sailing, so I'm feeling confident in the hulls, like the thing that we have spent all this time on and all these little jobs. And so yeah, I'm feeling confident in this and showing them the stuff.
There's a line in the movie which is a lot of people who have worked on the movie's favorite line. And I'm not going to say it exactly because I want people to experience it originally, but you kind of allude to the captain maybe being a little bit crazy. Are you feeling
it's actually
this?
it's not my line. It's actually, as we're finally out of the boatyard, but still docked in the boatyard, just a few days before we actually sail. This a friend came down because he had like a big barrel that we wanted to get for water. In the end, we didn't use it, but he's had a lot of sailing experience, mostly like close to shore and fishing, and he just looked at it, and that's what he told me. That line.
People have to see the movie to hear the line, but it's really funny because it's kind of like at this pressure point of the movie where it's getting a little scary maybe for you and Alisa, but the captain looks pretty excited, and throughout, I guess, again, this naivety, like having that, I mean, as a gift, I think, but also, like you said, you've worked on these hulls so much that you didn't have, like, you weren't super afraid of them. So you're starting to understand the boat a bit on as you work through getting it rebuilt, and you're starting to trust Kiana because she's obviously solving problems like along this way. Do you start to learn about Warrams and Polynesian like boats at this point as well? Or, you know, is that something that comes later? Or, you know, when do you start to really understand like Warrams and you know, the way that they're designed, and does that play into your confidence at all?
I mean, in the whole time of building the project Women and the Wind, Warren was always like a great presence and an inspiration, and we were looking a lot when we were trying to find out like the visual vibes. I was really inspired by this magazine called the Sailorman. Sailorman? No, I forgot what it's called. Like an old Warren magazine that has some really cool like vintage look to it. And also in that magazine, there was like a short article about Maranoka, because we had this whole thing of trying to figure out who built this boat and who are they and how can we get in contact with them. That's like another story. But I already was really inspired by Warren, and I had read the Two Girls, Two Catamarans book, and yeah. And I think that was definitely one of the big things as well that Kiana said. There was no worm has ever capsized, or so I don't know. I just thought like whatever we do, the boat is going to be intact and the hulls are going to stay here, and
we're going to be fine.
Maybe all the other things are going to break, but as long as we just like stay within these hulls, we're going to be okay.
And you guys, I mean, we're having this conversation because you made it, but I don't want to give away the movie anyway. But when you get to the other side, like, I mean, it's like we're talking a couple of years of your life now, you know, the dreaming and the planning, and then the refit, and then you do the crossing, which must just like in hindsight feel like it was the shortest part of everything. Although I'm sure when you're out at sea, time passes a lot more slowly. Is there like some depressive feeling after all of this, or does the process of like starting to figure out how to make this into a documentary just like kind of overtake that? Like, you know, you all kind of say that you didn't want to really arrive to land.
No, yeah, I think we definitely, like, we went through so much, but once we finally saw land, it was exciting, but it was also intimidating. And I think we just wanted to stay in this bubble that we had created and just keep sailing.
Because your life changes quite significantly after that. You know, you're now thrust in the public eye quite a bit, and the pressure's on to now take all of that footage and that story and turn it into a documentary. When do you guys launch this Kickstarter to help raise funds, or when do you realize that that's what you need to do?
I first of all, I don't have any, I don't really think of myself as somebody in the public eye, because it's just like a little thing in here that to me means, it means something, but it also is like, it's not really reality. So I don't feel that my life has changed in this way. It's like, for me, sometimes this Instagram stuff is almost like a made up thing that, yeah, it's so far from reality in a way. But other than that, I think after sailing, I still was lucky to go on another trip with Kiana. So before this whole sailing adventure ended for me, there was still some time, because Kiana would then sail down to the Canaries. I flew back to the Canaries from the Azores, because at this moment, I had been away for a year and 3 months, where I had told everyone when I left, I'm going to be back in 3 months. So it was like a year more than I had expected. And I wanted to like go with my original plan of sailing the surfboards to Cabo Verde. So I'm like, I need to go back to the Canaries in time that I can make all this happen. So when Kiana arrived, I had gathered like 18 surfboards, and I got some really cool local shapers to help fix them, because they were all broken boards. And then Kiana and I sailed to Cabo Verde together before she went to Brazil, and we took all these surfboards.
So she finally did it. She finally agreed to sail these surfboards for you. That's amazing.
I think she always wanted to do it. She just there were just like other things that came in the way.
Yeah. And then like whose idea was it to do a Kickstarter?
I think it was, actually, I don't know how to answer this. It was not my idea, but maybe it was Kiana, maybe it was Alice, maybe it was like the whole, that's how
Were you feeling
do
pressure
it.
though to like follow through with like this documentary, or your dreamy nature was already kind of like on to the next thing, and if it happens, it happens? Or did you realize you had to put in energy now, like to make this happen?
It's been such a long process that I can't even remember how I've been feeling in all these different months. I think it was definitely like an excitement because we had all this beautiful imagery, and then again, an extremely naive approach to how do you do this, and then just taking it one step at a time. And yeah, it's been another kind of journey in itself that has definitely had some ups and downs and detours here and there. And I think finally it's coming out in the moment that it should come out in. And
Yeah. I mean, it's been like what, nearly 4 years now? The whole from starting the idea to actually like preparing to premiere it in cinemas.
Yeah.
And then I guess like you are now, I guess the Instagram starts to take off because you've got this footage and you're starting, I mean, there's this desire to share it and start to figure out how to make this documentary, and then the Instagram goes off. Does that go off like overnight, or is it a slow but rapid increase? Because we're talking like from 8,000 to 250,000 in like less than a couple of years.
I think it really started with the journal entries, because we were sharing it like day by day. So people somehow, that the ones that were following, I guess they had a feeling that they were following our journey, because it was like one post at the time telling wherever we were. And so I think that got a lot of people in. And then of course, all the imagery and stuff got shared a lot. And I don't really remember. I think it's just like this weird algorithm snowballing thing, and some big account shares it. And I think we all didn't really care. I don't want to say didn't care in an ungrateful way, but
yeah,
it was just like this thing on the phone. You're like, oh, okay, whatever. You open it sometimes, you're like, oh, okay. But it's so far from you
how do I
personally. We just tried to share, and we never really thought too much about sharing in a way that people wanted us to share, but just share what we did. And
yeah,
so
that's something you guys have stayed true to, is just kind of like being really authentic and not being molded by this surge of popularity, and suddenly sponsors are interested in you guys and you're like, yeah, we've already done it.
Yeah.
You're a bit late. How are you feeling now about getting the movie out, like in the cinema? We've seen it a lot of times, but none of us have seen it on a cinema screen, and we kind of made it so that that's the place where it's gonna be like the best to see it. How are you feeling about the tour?
I'm feeling like really excited, and also just so excited that this is the way that it ends up coming out. Because I think it would have been different if we had gotten the big festival route, and it would have stayed more within maybe the industry. And I think this is where it needs to live, like with people, and getting out and be able to meet these people who have supported us and made this whole thing happen. And also just be able to have conversations with people and do Q&As. And yeah, I'm super excited for that. And then I'm so grateful that we get to travel to these different places. And I'm feeling almost again like I'm on another cliff of like jumping, and it's like, I don't know where this is taking me, but I'm going for it.
You've been a really big advocate of actually like getting it into the community screenings, and it's really funny because I think there's not really been a strategy the whole time. We were like, okay, we're going to sit down and do a distribution strategy, but things just kept moving. So like, like the post-production, there was just so many ups and downs, and And then I think we all took like a 2 or 3 month sort of like moment to digest at the end of last year. And then it was like, oh shit, we really have to figure out what's going to happen, because we applied for, you know, the big festival route, and then the film wasn't necessarily a fit for those. And it was like, I guess what we thought was the strategy then had to be rethought, but it was just like, hey, let's just, you know, get it out there and do it ourselves, which has been the nature of the project since day one. And now the overwhelming response to community screenings, where we've got like, I don't know, like 150 applications now in just a few weeks, on top of our actual official world tour. Like, I feel like you were right all along. Like, you were just such an advocate. Like, I don't really want it to just go to industry. I really want it. We were just tired, you know, like, hey, if someone wants to buy it, that'll be easy. Then we can move on. But this extra effort, it feels like it's so worth it.
I think it wasn't, I mean, I don't really know too much about this whole big industry, but I was always thinking, why do we care about those people? I care about the people that already really are super excited to see this movie. So that's why I just wanted to get out to the community and not try to please some film critics and big whatever. Because we only have such a big audience that are super excited to see it. So I'm so happy that it turned out this way. And I also just want to acknowledge that how lucky we are that you came along, because it's been really lucky for us to, again, it's like this gravitational energy that Maranoka has to like attract you to the project, and be able to have somebody that sees it as a passion project, because that's what we kind of, on this whole film making process, we definitely maybe attracted some people that didn't really see it that way. And it was hard for us because we had been working on it as a passion project, never with money or fame or anything like that in mind. And then to be able to get you along, and I mean, sometimes I don't understand why you're still here, because at least we had the adventure. I'm like, what? Angie just
well, it's turned into some, you know, obviously an entire adventure for us in building our own boat now. But it was just such a funny way that it happened, because I was one of those people that had just caught, like, I think some of the images of when the boat was in the boatyard, right when we were starting to think about creating like a floating stories lab, this idea of living as a family on board, but having it dedicated to like research and storytelling, because that's my background, you know. But no, like, I had no idea about wooden boats, or, I mean, the only thing I knew about wooden boats is like, you don't want one because they rot. Like, that was my education, you know. And that was way before I had been made aware, I guess, of all the fiberglass stuff that I'm really focused on right now, which is interesting because that's where we like share a common ground as well with the plastics and microplastics. But I remember like one of my first thoughts, and I saw some of the crossing footage after the original. I'm like, oh wow, they did it. It looks so uncomfortable, you know, like it's so stormy. They're like naked all the time because their clothes must be really wet, you know. It was moldy. Like making these judgments. And I think the only time I actually communicated on Instagram with Kiana, or I mean, it might have been any of you three, because you all run the Instagram, was like, hey, if you need a color grader, I know a really, really awesome color grader, Tim Rayford. You've got to reach out to him. And it was like, yeah, we're talking to this production company. Like, we're already like there. I'm like, okay. And then out of nowhere, funnily enough, it's just when I was so done with Instagram and I was about to quit it. And I hadn't really been following the project much more after that. Like, just on and off, you know. I had this message that I hadn't seen for like 5 days, and it was from Kiana saying, hey, like, we want to send you a rough cut of the movie and get your feedback, and we need it by Friday. And at this point, it's like midnight on Thursday night. We need your feedback by Friday morning. I'm like, I can't do that by Friday morning, but I can watch it Friday night. Okay, cool, there's still time. So I watched the movie on Friday night with Remy and Ryder. And like, I'm bawling my eyes out at the end. Like, it was and the movie wasn't finished. You know, we reopened it after that and spent like another 6 months working on it. But it had such a profound impact on me. And maybe that's the power of Maranoka. I'm not sure it's the power of all of you, but yeah, we're here a year and a half later because of that, I think.
Wait,
It's
I'm-
really
I,
special.
I just have to put my charger on. It's all gonna die, my computer, just a second. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, so I don't know, it's just something magnetic about it. Actually, you guys also just like had me at a really good time. I just had a, I think Sarah was 3 months old, so I just had a baby, and I had a negative experience working with an all male founded company that I'd been with for quite a long time, like as a contractor on and off, where they decided not to renew my contract, like at a period where I'd just come back from like my own like covered maternity leave. And I was still nursing. I mean, I'm still nursing now, but I was still nursing the baby. And it was like, I live in, another country. All my work's in English. I live in France. I don't speak fluent French. I haven't really been out there like drumming up my own work for ages because I've had plenty of work contracting with this company, and I had time, and I was quite upset with what happened to me, and I was quite done with men like professionally. And so I like find you girls, and I think the first call it was like, wow, you guys are amazing. And it was just a pleasure to be able to come on board. I had no idea the journey that was coming. I thought it would be like I just send a bit of feedback and we'd like go back and forth, and the movie would be finished and it would come out and basta.
I'm so happy you took a job offer of an unpaid 1 year job.
So many people don't realize that this movie is a passion project, and then foundation, came from that, and that's obviously going to gain a lot of traction moving forward. But like this is a non-profit, and it is a passion project, and I always get defensive when I see these, as I call them, armchair admirals who are like, dropping their judgments, and or people that are like, oh, the movie hasn't come out yet. What did they do with the Kickstarter money? It's like, do you know how much it costs to actually make a movie? This was done bare bones, and the people who were hired to finish the post-production, like the editor, the sound people, Tim, the color grade, etc., were paid. But the rest of us, we're just doing it for the love. I think that's something that makes the movie really authentic too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Well, I'm excited to I give a little hint that to be in person with you next soon. We're actually going to finally meet.
Me too.
The world knows you're coming to France for the Paris premiere.
I can't believe we haven't met. Like, you feel so familiar, like somebody we've known for such a long time, but we never met in person. It's crazy.
And it's going to be so weird. But also no, and we're going to have Hannah Kaboon is coming over. She's the head of Wareham Designs, and so we're all going to be together, which is super exciting. And we're going to drop some dates very soon. Probably by the time this talk goes live, those dates will be out.
Yes.
But Paris looks like it's selling really fast, and maybe will be sold out soon. So,
wow.
Which premiere are you most excited for?
I mean, all of them, to be honest. I haven't favored one over the other. I'm hoping that I get to show it in Denmark at some point.
Yeah.
Because it would be nice for me to have family and like at all of these events. I don't really have anyone coming that I know of to any of the screenings. So it would be nice I hope to get to show it in Denmark so I could have the people that also made it happen for me, because without family support, I also wouldn't have been able to do this. I mean, even if it's just moral support, just that means a lot.
And like just with the love of traditional wooden boats in Denmark, I think there's quite a lot of people with Warems there as well. We're trying to make it happen. We're trying to make it happen, and we'll have more news on that soon. But honestly, it's just such a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm so excited for the tour. I'm so thrilled that I've got to work with you over the past year and a half, and like I hope we get to work together, moving forward on other projects as well. So you're just such an inspiring person, and I just love how art and creativity is just such a part of, I think, like the drive that you have as a being, and it's like what kind of moves you in this way that you're just like, yeah, I'll just go jump off that cliff, it's going to be fine, I'll create my way out of it. It's so cool. And these things exist, because of that attitude. So thank you for having this long chat with me.
Yeah, thank you. We didn't even get into any plastic pollution or all the
we can
I don't think we need to.
I think we might need to have like a second chat about that. I want to actually maybe do a chat with all three of you when you're here. But because that's super important, and you and I are very passionate about that part of things, and like you dedicate, I mean, both of us in ways of dedicating our lives to it now, and it's such an overwhelming thing that maybe can put a damper on those dreamy vibes sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's pick that up for another next conversation.
Cool.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
You too, and looking forward to seeing you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.